Welcome to the Dolphin Radio Show, the most watched radio show on this specific web address. Tonight we were supposed to have a special guest, a mechanical malady known only as Jay the Magic Robot, but he's currently getting his oil changed. So we settled for the usual suspects to come in and help me talk about the philosophy of governance. I'd welcome Samaj and I'm sorry, I got the wrong
Darnell.
window open. Darnell. Yeah, I was about to call you Darnell. But I'm always afraid of getting people's names wrong. So anyway, guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Hello.
Got my towel ready?
All right, so let's start off with full disclosure. Samaj, political, socio-political position.
What you mean, like conservative or liberal, or?
I mean, start off with type of government or no government, and then go left, right, from there.
Well, I'm still relatively new in the whole concept of governments and stuff, so mostly because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. My field is mostly in the arts and how that works. As far as like having a government, I do think that it's a good thing, and I do think it has to happen. I do believe that it should have limited power, though. But I think that there is an importance to having a government. Yeah, not much on the anarcho-capitalist, is it? Not much on that.
Anarcho-capitalist. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, Darnell, government and politics. Let's hear it. Are you there?
In brightest day and blackest night.
Yeah.
Let no evil escape my sight.
I think he grabbed a beer.
Oh, that might be useful.
All right, fair. Full disclosure, I'm what you call an anarcho-capitalist. I'm incredibly limited government, but I am, at least to a very small degree, not necessarily a statist, but a community organization enthusiast. Anyway, tell me, Samaj, why do you believe that people need a government? What is it that a government can do that people working together cannot?
Well, I think that people working together can do a fair bit, and to an extent you could say that you don't really need something. But other times when you have such large bodies of people, you do need to have a singular...
Yeah, sorry about that. My phone crashed.
That's all right. Go on, Smosh.
I do think that when you have large bodies of population, you do need to have like some sort of representatives of sorts. I live in a fairly big city, and there are different people from different areas, and you mark them as like this area is Lakewood, this one's Millwoods, a lot of wood stuff in my area. I think it's impossible for large groups to come up with unifying, I don't know, voices, if you will. I think there's too much diversity in that sense, and you need a government of sorts to try and come up with these ideas together, at least as far as I can understand it. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but as best I can interpret.
This is philosophy of government, and it's kind of a Platonic conversation. Platonic being a way of figuring out problems by thinking about them without actually examining any evidence or doing any experimentation. So it's like pure philosophy here. So feel free to not know anything. That's part of the whole philosophical thing. The most brilliant men in the world, the most intelligent ones, know nothing. But Darnell, we're going to get back to you with government affiliations and politics. Define yourself.
You can probably tell my bias in this, but as a political science and law major, I do believe in these shows human necessity for a government, but my stance is the idea that it's more on the we need a government to help and to help ourselves and help us from ourselves, but it also is on the responsibility of the populace to make sure that the government is not inept or corrupt or whatever it is. So it is like a double-edged sword.
Well,
you know, there's the power to the people, and then there's the power to, you know, the basis on the basis itself. This is why we have laws, but then at the same time we have the rights to take away the, you know, the elected officials.
so you're an advocate of the consent of the governed concept.
Mine can. I did not learn that one. Do you mind? You know.
Oh,
explain
the
that
government derives its power from the consent of the governed. If the governed
one? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
choose,
So the Rousseau argument. Yeah. Okay, that one. I just never heard it phrased that way before.
I've been talking to communists all day, so I have to dumb down everything I say. If you'll please forgive me.
No, don't worry. It's just because I have to hear it from, like, you know, the Locke philosophy or the Rousseau philosophy. You know, I never heard it as the consent of the, you know, consent of the community sort of way.
So you believe that the people need the government kind of in the same way like Samaj declared, where it was minimalist.
Yeah, more like the idea of, like, okay, we do not, okay, to communicate, for communications or the accessibilities or something like that. Not that the government needs to do everything. There are some things the government should not touch, and, you know, like, for instance, people's personal lives, entertainment, so on and so on. They don't need to manage that, but a bunch of other things that's essentially like, okay, representative of this, in foreign relations, so on and so on. And like I said, if the people within a reasonable amount, and like I said, what's reasonable can be very interpreted in different scenarios. I believe that people could fight back if they, you know, deem that the government is not doing its job correctly. And laws are meant to be more so on the protection of the, you know, individual rather than like the whole of a whole.
So I take it you lean more to the right on the individualist kind of ideals as far as politics go.
I lean more on the idea that's like, don't contradict on whatever I do in my bedroom. If I want to jerk off to busty women and I'm of legal age, it doesn't really matter what, you know, that sort of thing. As long as I'm not breaking any laws or harming anyone, I really don't, you know, why are you looking at my stuff?
That's interesting. I've heard a lot of people describe that, and I'm starting to create like this kind of theory that the only real amendments that we need to protect our rights are the 9th and 10th, and the only reason that the first 8 exists is to make it impossible to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
But the 9th and 10th Amendment basically, you know, when you boil it down, says you can do whatever you want as long as it's not going to hurt or disparage anybody else's right to do whatever they want.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Basically, yeah, your rights end where everyone else's begins, and everybody else's rights end where your rights begin.
And the purpose of the courts, in my always theory, was more on the idea when these rights are broken, then how do we settle this without it turning into blood feuds? See,
and at that point, that is literally the only value I see in government is the arbiter of disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see any point in the government regulating business, commerce, or even creating infrastructure. But I also don't agree with the privatization of human service structures, especially when you have a large government. If you have a large government, for example, and you allow private prisons, then those private prison companies are going to lobby the government to increase the number of laws, to throw more people in cages so that they can make more money because it benefits them. So I don't agree with the privatization of human services or any human need in a large government. But then again, I don't agree with, I do agree with privatization of everything under a no government system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So question for both of you. What kind of world do we have where there is no government? How could that work, or how would it not work, in your opinions?
I feel like okay, so give me the scenario. Is this more like a post-war kind of world, or is this just like a somehow magically?
All right, let's take you and 1,200 other people. Wait, what's necessary requirements for sustainable populations? 1,800. So we'll take you and 1,799 other people, and we're gonna just drop you on an island. No rules, no nothing. Nobody's in charge of anybody. You're all just independently dropped.
Okay, my philosophy in the way, since like I said, I'm a political science guy. I also like to study history, and I'm not really a psychology guy, but it's, something I like to, I don't know, imagine myself researching every once in a while. But the way I always see it is essentially those 1,800 people, including me, would end up finding their own little groups, and then they would start making their own laws onto thinking away. Okay, we should all work in this way. Some of us will work the field, some of us will work this, some of us will do all the things that needed to survive. Then as these groups start to develop and grow, then eventually they'll start having to work with the other groups. And then with those other groups, then they'll start becoming alliances, negotiations, conflicts, and so on and so on. And then eventually coming into a, not really the idea of a unification, because like I said, like generations or so on and so on, but then you're going to see order like fluctuate and having it being like everybody kind of knows where, like, there's not going to be the absence of power. That's my main argument, that the absence of power is going to be solved very quickly.
All right, Samaj, how do you feel about that?
Well, when I think about the island scenario, I actually think of a different scenario, mostly involving children in schools, and the idea of having, let's say, teachers around to keep an eye on the kids and make sure they don't get into trouble. And often what I've heard works best is actually less supervision. In other words, like, if the kids know, like, okay, the simple things of, like, don't leave the playground and no roughhousing, and then just walk away, like, don't do any of that kind of stuff, they find that the kids will actually govern themselves. I mean, you could have a bully in the community, the kids will take care of that for them, opposed to if the kids have to rely on someone like a teacher or a representative, that kind of stuff, that the kids will eventually work on the problems themselves and sort it out for themselves. And I tend to feel that people are pretty much the same way. You drop them on an island, they will govern as best as they can within that scenario. Where I think that the need for government and representation comes in line is mostly when dealing with other groups and other scenarios, because when you get isolated, you're going to form cliques, you're going to form relationships, you're going to form necessary bonds with people, mostly because of necessity, out of the circumstances, you kind of have to. And then, if you have to deal with other groups, but those are large bodies, you don't take the entire body of a population and then get them to interact with another body of the population. That would take forever. That would take a long time. So that's why we tend to elect officials. We tend to appoint people to represent us within certain conversation, or at least to negotiate on our behalf. That's how I view it as going down. How you reach that consensus, I mean, that's up for the people to decide, but if that's the scenario I'd see that in.
I ain't talking to no stinking Chinaman, that's for sure.
Well, you might not want to talk to someone, but you can always find someone who will.
Well, if they're the only ones selling food, guess what?
Well, I mean, if you're on an island on the other, and your neighboring island is China, well, I mean, sometimes you have to talk with them. If you don't want to, well, who are you going to talk to? You might have to go across the ocean. And that might be too expensive and time-consuming to attempt.
I think that in my opinion, in today's modern world, besides being an arbiter for disagreement between independent parties who have contracted with each other, which is, there's no need for government to contract between. Like, if you and I sat down and did a contract between us, I'm going to provide this, you're going to give me that in exchange for it. As long as we both agree, we both abide by the contract, there's no arbiter needed. There's no laws needed to create that. Nobody has to come and take our stuff and give it to anyone else for any reason. But it's when we get into a disagreement that we're going to need somebody to come along and stand up and say, okay, let me hear your side, and let me hear your side. You're wrong and you're right. And and I think that that's kind of the situation that the government serves. But in a world like today, where there are a just ridiculous number of states all across the world, and they have all different attitudes. You know, you've got like the short bus of the world, North Korea, trying to shoot missiles at everyone. You've got Sweden that's just going to bend over and take it from anyone who shows up. And you've got all the countries in between that'll just fill out the rest of the spectrum. The non-state is going to be crushed. And that is the only justification in today. So I believe that if you could get rid of all states at once, then you wouldn't need a state. But if it's just you and you're on your own, you've got your 1,800 people, and there's another island over here with 1,800 people, and so forth and so on. Eventually, you're going to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. At some point, somebody's going to want your stuff, and they're going to realize that, you know, nobody in your society takes anything from anybody, so none of you are prepared to defend it from being taken.
Yeah. I think like the need for government is important, especially when the population is as large as it is. There's too much going on. You need some network of some sort to try and operate on. At least that's the best way I can interpret it. Which is not really an add-on to what you were saying. It's just something I thought that popped in my head. I felt I needed to get out before I forget it. Yeah.
Hey, Darnell, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just, you guys
awesome.
talk first, and then I'll do it.
All right, so I'm noticing and I never really picked up on it because I just jumped on Twitter this year, but I never really noticed how many people out there claim to be both anarchists and communists at the same time.
Well, that's actually one thing I've kind of noticed, and going to the Tumblr space and that sort of thing. The way I've seen it is that they believe that essentially, the way it goes is that they are communists, they are anarchists that believe that through communism they will achieve anarchy. Like, we'll make it all one state, and then they'll distribute everything and make everything perfect, and then they will eventually give up the power and let it be anarchy. And it's like, one extreme to the other.
Wow. So they honestly believe that if you give a centralized authority figure the right to take all the stuff from everybody and redistribute it, and they have that power, taking everybody's stuff, resources, monies, lands, everything, like literally everything, and that person has this authority that once they're done, they're just going to be like, oh, I'm done, now I get my stuff, right?
Yep, that is exactly what they think.
Wow. And of course, this person is going to be the type of person that doesn't ever want to rule ever, right? Because that's, in my opinion,
no, they're the same people that would have fought in the what was it called, the Red Army during the Russian Revolution. They're those people that believe that that was a good idea, sort of way.
Oh, yeah, we got Jay in the chat's actually pointing out that there are independent organizations that can help with arbitration of contracts and stuff. That's actually that's a really valid argument, and kind of kills my most significant reason for having government.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's enough people with different viewpoints, different viewpoints that will like come together and form groups like this. So, yeah,
and there's a private organization for literally anything that you can think of.
Yeah. Well, and now with the internet around, I mean, people with viewpoints can connect with other people with similar viewpoints much easier now than they've ever had, which is, of course, the thing that's making the world different now more than ever, just because the internet connects people like from all over. Through YouTube, I've been able to have chats with people from the UK to Canada to Finland. I mean, people I would never think I could do that, but it's fascinating.
And with that power, Why would I take it you guys are both in the States, right?
I'm in Canada.
Well,
Okay, all right. Well,
yeah, I'm
I
in the
would say
US.
close enough, but with Justin Trudeau, I'm not really sure.
Well, considering he wants to go as far the other direction as Donald Trump as humanly possible, I foresee in the next 2 years. Don't be surprised if Canada becomes a purely socialist communist state.
So I guess we're gonna have to build 2 walls then.
You might have to. You might have to. Although I guarantee you, he's only going to be here for another 2 years, unless his latest scandal gets him impeached, which will be the first time ever in Canadian history.
We're sorry, eh?
Well, that's what you get when you get a ski instructor to run your country.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. But then again, when the I think the voter turnout is like 70% women, it's not surprising that it turns out this way.
A ski instructor who's also a boxer, who I'm pretty sure, last time I checked his records, almost never won like an even match.
Yeah. Well, he's also a part-time drama teacher. So I mean, he is quite literally the. I know it's.
I thought he was just a part-time high school teacher. I had no idea he taught drama.
That's the only thing he taught.
Like suddenly all the puzzle pieces are interlocking.
Yeah. Justin Trudeau is quite literally the most underqualified prime minister in Canadian history. It's an embarrassment to say the least. But our prime minister is essentially a meme. But you guys down in the States just elected your first meme president. So
No.
No, I don't see Donald Trump as a meme.
You also had that, and let's not forget your other meme candidate, the fucking mayor of Toronto.
Yes, but he at least made politics interesting. And
you know what I don't understand about you Canadians is that you guys had, what was it? I think it was like a year ago, or it was back in 2015 that you guys had that law that they were trying to push that would make it illegal to gossip or call people bad names or something like that, and you would get like a $400 fine for calling somebody a bad name, like $600 for gossiping or something like that.
That I wouldn't question that. It might be a different province. I don't know. I know that like here in Alberta, which is where I live, apparently it's illegal to sell comic books that has a crime being committed. But that one enforces
to make
that.
a comic book that has crime on it.
I think it's sell. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making a comic book. You can't sell them, which I never noticed, but I don't think it's ever been enforced because criminals have completed acts in comic books before. I think I even have a couple of them. So I don't think they're enforcing the laws here. I don't think they really care.
It's kind of silly considering that the vast majority of comic books are superheroes fighting super criminals.
Well, I think the goal is that they stop like the average crime. Like if a supervillain is going to try and destroy the world, obviously they're going to be defeated. Or if they're going to kill someone, that's obviously going to be stopped. So a crime like that's never been committed. But I think what they're referring to are things like robberies and other various different types of assaults. That could be it.
So kind of like the Crime Control Authority, where they used to have a law saying that you couldn't have a police officer be corrupt.
Yeah, I mean that's and also you couldn't portray vampires, and that was another weird one. But
zombies.
I mean,
zombie lives matter.
Exactly. But I mean, like I said, it's one of those laws that's still on the books, but it's not ever going to be really enforced. I know like America's got a couple as well. I think somewhere it's illegal for a chicken to cross the road. Something weird like
in Minnesota, it is illegal to feed a moose an alcoholic beverage. I think it's Minnesota.
In Louisiana, it's illegal for a minor to be in a car without wearing any protective footwear, and that they're not wearing socks as well. So they can't just be walking around with socks in a car.
Well, I know it's illegal where I live to drive with no shoes on, which if you've ever done that's actually, I can agree with that law.
Well, I think the reason they said with the other one, it was more so that because it's much harder to take off a kid if they're wearing shoes for some reason.
All right, but I do have a question for Jay over in the chat. We were talking earlier about the value of government as far as defending yourself from other states. And I so badly wanted to have this with him, but I'll see what you guys have to think about it. Before the Roman Empire came to power, back in I think it was about 180 BC, there was another empire called the Punic Empire, or the Carthaginian Empire, and it was centered around, it was centered around Carthage and parts of Spain, like Carthago Nuevo, or New Carthage, basically. But they were a sea power. They didn't have a lot of land, and they didn't have a standing military. Their entire military force was was made up of mercenaries, with a handful of generals who were nobility within the Carthaginian society. And that's where you have people like Hannibal and Hasdrubal and Mako and people like that, you know, who fought the Romans and unfortunately lost. But my question is for you guys and for Jay is, how do you defend yourself from a purely without any form of governance or any form of government standing military? And I know the militia argument, but on the same hand, if you're going to go and privatize everything in a world of private services, if it didn't work for Carthage for 20 years, and they were actually crushed basically because at Zama all the mercenaries ran away, how does that work for a government or a stateless society? I have not discounted that everyone is armed. I definitely agree with that point, but go on. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure the only thing would be is if everyone was armed. Because I think that really is the only argument, because I can't really think of any other reason to stop that. It also, and also maybe like employ people to help out, like mercenaries as well. That's a tough one. Because let's remember, if there's no state, no government, and no military, you have to defend yourself, and that might only take you as far as, who knows, maybe even like turn tail and run.
Well, I mean,
that was my.
Go on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that was gonna be my idea, because if you have a stateless society and there's no, like, unless it's essential, and the whole thing of the militia thing, where it's like people aren't gonna band together, and you have a horde, like a group of horde, coming in, then I think the most sensible thing people would do in that scenario would be belongings, or like, okay, these are the important things I need, and then just try to run. I mean, because the similar thing did happen, at the end of the Roman Empire when the barbarians came.
I guess it does boil down to the three options. I mean, you can try and stand your ground, you can try and run, or you can surrender. I mean, it doesn't sound, the third one doesn't sound that good, but I mean, running doesn't sound that good either, because then you're practically giving up everything you may have gotten, like be it agriculture or homes, and ultimately probably even you're weak and injured. So.
Well, I personally put the weak and injured on the front lines with with some nice medium to heavy sized firearms.
Well, that are explosives. But
yeah, rig them up to blow once they're out of bullets and they're about to get stabbed with a bayonet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if that's the case, I mean, we need to come up with a chant for ourselves. I know that the extremists have Allahu Akbar, but maybe we need something else for them.
Allahu no Akbar. Yeah, there you go.
Well, yeah, exactly. What would an atheist say if he was going to be a suicide bomber? I do this for myself, which is a contradiction unto itself.
No, no gods, no masters. Jay would like that one.
No God, no master. Well, that's a good question, though. Now I may have to stop and think about that. What if I was an atheist suicide bomber? What would I yell?
You probably go to push the button and be like, hold on, I got something for this. Just don't shoot yet. I got something. I'm supposed to yell. I don't believe in this. Boom.
or take the agnostic approach, like for God who may or may not be real.
I'm about to try and figure out if this thing I don't know if I want to believe in or not is true. Boom.
I mean, it's
I don't know
nowhere,
anything.
it may not. It's certainly nowhere near as dramatic as Allahu Akbar, but I mean, it's a start. I don't know, for the flying spaghetti monster. That's another one.
Well, you guys know I'm not an atheist, right?
No, but I mean,
Dead silence in the room. It always gets them. I'm also not a theist, so don't.
Well, no, I was
freak
just
out
trying to
quite
think.
yet.
I was just trying to think. That's what I was pretty much doing.
Well, I've come to realize that in these, not to really assume, just because anyone could be anything. As far as I can tell, I mean, it really doesn't matter what your viewpoints are, just as long as we can still have the conversation in the end.
Oh yeah, I've yet to meet an atheist who listens to what I believe in and go, "That's totally wrong." I've never heard an atheist say that, and a lot of them will actually be like, "That's actually, that's made me think I'm gonna have to come back to this."
Well, I know that there's a lot of people of faith who feel a bit defensive when it comes to atheists, and actually, I do think that they have a point. I didn't think that they did back in the 90s or so when, you had to be a person of faith to run for office practically. And, every news organization was a faith-based news organization for the most part. They openly would say that kind of stuff. So I understand why atheists felt discriminated against, especially if you want to run for office. I think with the only exception being that I know of, I'm sure there's others, of Jesse Ventura. But he's a bit of a character unto himself, so I don't know how reliable that is.
The thing with Jesse is Jesse gets elected if you can't stop him from speaking. If you can stop him from speaking, you run a chance of beating him. The minute he gets up on stage and debates you, you've already lost.
You think so?
He's just gonna. Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen the man debate?
He
will make everybody. He will make the Republican and the Democrat look like absolute jackasses every time.
He does have a certain weight to him and charisma that definitely works. But I mean, it's the same thing with comedians. I mean, they could probably convince you as well, but that, of course, is a type of charisma. It's my viewpoint, anyway. Now I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I'll tie you over for a minute here. One of the most brilliant statements I ever heard anybody say about government is a couple of years, or actually, it's quite a while ago now. God, I feel old. When I was in college, one of my professors was listening to me and some of the other students discussing politics, and he's just smiling and whatnot for about 20 minutes, and then he finally interrupted us and goes, "Hey, before you guys say anything else that makes you look even any more stupid than you already do, you guys even know what government is?" And we were like, "No, what do you think government is?" He's like, "It's not what I think. I'm going to tell you right now. Government is a group of people who get to decide where everybody's money gets spent. And you don't get a choice." And honestly, to this day, that's still one of the best definitions of government I've ever had. They're the people who decide where your money gets spent.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I mean, we didn't even talk about the concept of, like, taxes. And, should we even have them? I mean, we've gone over the scenario of, like, people on islands and stuff. That's not really a tax thing. That's more like, let's get someone that represents us to negotiate on our behalf.
Taxes, hey, I don't know about you, but my taxes go to the Coconut King.
Yeah. I put my money in coconuts. That's a safe investment. Yeah. Al, do we want to talk about taxes? And
yeah, I mean, it's in the tags. I might as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, the importance of taxes. Should we tax? I know Jay's point is, like, taxation is theft, and I can definitely see that. Yeah, for sure. But in some cases, I mean, you do need some money of some sort.
Well, I had a discussion with somebody not too long ago where we talked about credit. And this is really funny because if you take a communist that you're arguing with on Twitter, like spend apparently way too much time these days doing. And you say, all right, well, let me ask you this. 5 guys go into a bank, and all of them have the same job. They all make the same money. They're all the same age, and they're all trying to get a $10,000 loan. The only difference between them is that this guy here has an incredibly low score on his credit score. This guy has an incredibly high score, and the other 3 guys are in the middle. Who gets the lowest interest rate? The guy with the best credit. Who gets the worst interest rate? The guy with the lowest credit. Well, what does that mean? That means that the person who has the best ability and the most competent ability to pay his bills on a day-to-day, week-by-week, month-by-month, year-by-year basis is going to get the best deal and end up paying the least amount of interest on this loan. Whereas the guy who has the most trouble and struggles the most going from point A to point B financially is going to get the biggest penalties and the biggest cost applied to him. And when you go from that and then you go into statism, you have the people who are producing the most, creating the most, your farmers, your industrialists, your people who are really generating the wealth of the government. That's who the government's going to come and take all their stuff. And the people they're going to reward with that stuff are going to be the people who don't produce, who in fact are going backwards in the production level and are nothing but consumers. So you're rewarding bad behavior and punishing good behavior. And it's like, it's the exact opposite of the credit thing. You're rewarding good behavior with the lower interest rate, but at the same time, you're expecting somebody who already has enough trouble to try and pay back a loan that's going to be more difficult to pay back than it is for the guy with the good credit who gets the better deal.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you think about things from that perspective, I mean, like the people who create the money and all that kind of stuff, technically you would assume that you're essential. We need people like you farmers and all that kind of stuff. We need to make sure that you don't get fucked over because we rely on you. And you would think that would be a great idea. And you're right about the whole rewarding people who produce nothing, which we could obviously say is like the welfare state of sorts. People we give money to who do generally nothing. In that particular case, I would ask, I would try and circle that line of thought back to why that's there in the first place. Like, why are we helping these people? And whenever I tend to try and ponder on that idea, I end up doing stuff, and it makes me say stuff I really hate saying, just because the way my viewpoints go are very liberal in a lot of ways. But I hate saying this, but a lot of that comes from the idea of like helping the weak and all that kind of stuff. Tends to come from the idea of females in politics who feel a very motherly urge to help them out. In that case, I would say that maybe women in politics is not a good idea, which I hate saying. I hate saying it. I do. I don't want to say that. And it's not necessarily true. But I have heard that line of thinking that we need to, like, wealth distribution, which is another concept, which I hear it mostly from liberal parts, but I also hear a lot from women in politics. And I don't hear a lot of men talking about that. It's mostly the women that I hear this from, and that's why I wonder if that's a aspect of the nurture to be motherly and caring and whatnot. I'm not saying that guys don't have that, but I'm just saying.
I'm going to have to stop you right here because
thank you.
Your president is Justin Trudeau.
He's a prime minister. Thank you very much.
Basically throws everything you just said under the bus.
Well, not really.
I was gonna say, well, James, let your inner MGTOW flow.
No. I mean, what I'm saying actually falls in line with that because because we here in Canada we're very much a welfare state in a lot of ways. We do a lot of that kind of stuff. We definitely going to spend a lot more money on like getting Muslims over here because of everything. But Justin Trudeau, the only reason he is prime minister is, well, one, he's the only one that seemed confident at the time, but also because, like I said earlier, is that we have the voter turnout is predominantly women. They've essentially dominated the political sphere for a very long time. And it's not just with Trudeau. I mean, it was also like with Stephen Harper, where he had a fair bit. Who was our previous prime minister? He had a lot there, and the Trudeau senior, the first Trudeau, he was also very much on the lines of that as well. I mean, women in politics, in the voting systems, voted for these people, and this is what they said they would do. They would help out the welfare. They said that they said they would increase it, and they did. And it was a lot of the women who voted them in. And then there's women politicians, and Justin Trudeau is very much he's openly a feminist. He says all men should be feminists. And he hasn't quite said it, but he has hinted the idea that guys really should give their money to women. It's not. Yeah, you're right, but I mean, it's not that I'm not that far off. At least when it comes to our politicians.
Well, I think it's kind of silly to say that that women generally look to help the welfare state. I honestly don't believe that. I don't believe that female politicians or male politicians really want to increase the welfare state because they care about poor people. I don't think that they ever have. I think that welfare state, like, you think that they're giving that money directly to the recipients? You know, for every dollar the recipients get, there's $2 going to different companies that are basically just, you know, I want to say like shells of the government. You know, they've got long-standing contracts with the government. They don't have to advertise with anyone. They don't have to go out there and create anything or do anything. They just get paid to turn around and give a portion of that money. It's almost like a nonprofit charity that raises money for cancer awareness and pays its CEOs $250,000 a year to play golf once a week. You know, it's just bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure, and I don't mean that. Now I have to do damage control. No, that's okay.
It's all right. It's all right. We already knew you were a misogynist because you don't have a female Green Lantern. Come on.
Hey, there is a female Green Lantern.
There are many female Green Lanterns.
There's a lot of them. There's the Green Lantern Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. They're an intergalactic space force, which sounds an awful lot like angels. But that's going back into the mythology of Green Lanterns, which sounds very, very religious if you actually look at their text of the comics.
You mean the origin of evil being created by a guy trying to look at the origin of the world?
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, they have they have a sacred book, which is like the Book of Oa. Or something like that, and it's the way it's written. It's very much religious.
You can see the future, you can see the past, you can see everything.
Yeah, well, that's storytelling in general. But that, yeah.
There's also the Book of the Dead. Every single one of the course has a different book.
Yeah. It's all
you have to say the oath to use the power.
Which is a lot like saying the Lord's Prayer in a lot of ways. The Green Lantern is very much a faith-based ish kind of thing. If that or a parody of faith.
Well, I mean, how is that really different than the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star Spangled Banner, honestly, or "O Canada"? Well, yeah, you didn't think I knew that one, did you?
No. That makes total sense to me. Well, I guess like we're saying like the pledge and all that. That's more or less like your alliance to the country.
I know, but my question is, I mean, in the United States, children in kindergarten who have no idea what these words they're saying mean are taught to memorize and say this like it's a morning prayer every single morning. And when they do it, they have to stand at attention, put their hands over their hearts, and be respectful. And if they don't, they get in trouble. And I think that I'm sure there are a lot of Americans who are going to jump down my throat for saying that. I believe that to be a form of indoctrination, because when you really break down the Pledge of Allegiance and you think about what those words mean, you don't have any idea that you're basically swearing yourself away,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of the reason why they stopped doing that in schools. Well, that and we know the other reasons, but...
Oh, yeah. A lot of people got butthurt over, what is it, "In God We Trust," "One Nation Under God," or whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, but I mean, you have like a lot of the other peoples that, essentially it goes against their beliefs. So, like I used to actually go to high school with Jehovah's Witnesses, and they wouldn't say the oath. So, And then eventually, after what I saw, like, you just stopped doing it altogether. We stopped doing it altogether. It was essentially, yeah, we're wasting time. Let's just be productive.
Well, I can sort of understand that, but I think saying the Pledge of Allegiance, that kind of stuff. I think it also tries to instill a sense of patriotism within the kids.
Yeah, but you can put your kids in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for that. I mean, it doesn't need to be indoctrinated through state-run schools.
Well, yeah, but not every kid can afford it. I mean, I was fortunate; I went to Scouts, but I mean, we couldn't afford it. That's why me and my brother didn't get to keep going. We were there for maybe a summer, and that was it.
Yeah, my Scout troop actually has a fund that it puts together for kids that can't afford to be in Scouts.
Yeah. And actually, like, in being in Scouts, because I grew up without a father, but I can tell you right now, it was actually very useful. Very useful.
Oh yeah, especially with not having a father around, I can see that.
Well, and I think now we're going on the topic of like fatherless homes, because that's also a very disturbing number. Which is why I'm thinking like the idea of instilling patriotism is probably a good thing. And as an atheist, I'm going to say this is a very contradictory thing. I think more kids need to go to church. And the reason why I say that is because all the aspects of having males in households has been dwindling so rapidly, in the sense that, like, I think in America right now, 60% of all homes with kids are fatherless, which is a huge number. But the kids would get like other male interaction, like from uncles and all that kind of stuff. But now, as far as I can tell, I don't know the numbers on that. But also it was like from, let's say, male teachers. Well, now that we've been sort of rapidly kicking male teachers out of the job because of toxic masculinity and all that stuff. So, oh yeah, and that's such a bad thing. So now the kids don't get male interaction from the teachers. So what was the other thing? Well, there's extracurricular activities like sports and whatnot. Well, that's also been rapidly going down. So the last vast place where kids can get any male interactions usually is within church, and that's usually because the guy who, the priest and all that, or minister, you'll have to forgive me, I don't know the terminology that well, would be a male. And not saying that there aren't women who run those church groups and all that stuff, but it is predominantly men. And I skipped a spot there. I was going to also say about mothers working, and so when we used to have like stay-at-home moms, they would organize things like neighborhood watches and neighborhood parties, and you get a sense of community within the neighborhood. But now they don't do that anymore because mothers have to go out and earn a living, and yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know what it was. Like, this is, I love a great sales pitch just for its sheer ability to influence people. I would love to have heard the sales pitch that whoever the genius that came up with it was, that convinced women that giving up 40 hours of their life every week to a soulless company that doesn't care about them is somehow empowering. Because, man, I got a ton of ham and a bunch of rabbis I'd like to sell it to.
That's why.
Well, I think it would, the increase of feminism within cultures. It sort of teaches you that you don't need men, that we are equals no matter what. I mean, even when the discovery of hormones that determines like your sex and all that kind of stuff, even that, I remember there was feminists who were protesting about, at scientists and stuff, saying that you're just trying to create a divide between men and women, that you're just trying to create racial tensions, or not, I mean sexual tensions between the sexes or something.
Hey, sexual tensions is a good thing.
That depends on how you interpret
good thing
that.
to break.
This stream brought to you by Dengue Eggs.
No, I've got my own ads, man. No shilling Tenga eggs on my channel.
Well, to be fair, they're not. This is hashtag not sponsored. I say it as a joke.
All right, guys. Well, the Dolphin Radio Show, for those of you who don't know, is about an hour long, and I'd like to thank my guests, Samaj and Darnell, for coming on and joining me tonight. You guys have any last thoughts before I talk us out of this?
Well, it was an interesting conversation. Very productive for someone who knows very little about this stuff. So I'm glad that we had it.
And to throw more shit to the fan, Jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
Oh, God. No, but contrails can.
Contrails. Wait,
Comtrail. No. Whatever.
Are you talking about chemtrails?
Chemtrails, yes.
No,
Chemtrails can melt steel beams.
No, you got that mixed up. Chemtrails are designed to brainwash you into thinking that lizard people don't exist.
I thought that was Harambe.
And that the frogs are gay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I thought they were turning Harambe gay. Shit, man, I got my memes all mixed up.
That could very well be. We might be in for another meme war. So, no, we'll see.
Can I just say one thing? I really, those famous World War II things where they say, "Daddy, where were you during the Great War?"
Yeah.
I seriously want someone to make that by saying, "Where were you during the Great Meme War?"
Like, show you a picture of you riding on the back of Pepe with a bazooka on your shoulder and an eagle on your other one.
Oh, it's not gonna be a bazooka. It's gonna be a giant strap-on dildo.
I was riding a velociraptor that was standing on the back of a laser shooting shark.
Yes, come on. If we're gonna make this into a meme war, we're gonna make this the greatest meme war ever.
Probably.
My memes are the best. They're huge.
They're the dankest memes you've ever seen all over the internet.
I can't wait till somebody comes and reverses that with the memest danks.
So dank.
Little buds of pot shaped like Pepe the Frog. This is the memest dank ever. Anyway, guys, we'll be returning next week with another Outside the Wheelhouse format to humanize yet another divisive internet personality for your entertainment and hope in humanity. And if you are a divisive internet personality who's going to be in the internet area on any given Wednesday and would like a spot on my show, you can contact me via Twitter at Dolphin_radio_. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Dreams, where communism works, and by BlackLivesMatterSTL.com, offering services and resources for citizens of the greater St. Louis area. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.